One of the most valuable poetry lessons I personally received that I think may also be valuable for you, I'd love to know your own experiences, was I was at Kaolu, which is a poetry retreat. I was working with the facilitator, Ivy Francis, and one of the things that she told us was the individual is universal. It's like the more you're able to tune into your own individual experiences through writing, the more you're actually able to allow people to enter in your poem, even if they haven't had that same exact experience you have. They can empathize. And the opposite, where when you try to write for everyone, you try to incorporate elements that you think that can just apply to a general audience, those are the times where you can actually kind of isolate yourself and make it more difficult for people to enter your piece. And so in today's episode, of Fine Print, we're going to be taking a look at a poem talking about ways that it is separating itself and finding its own individual audience who can then determine, is this a piece that's right for them to continue with, or maybe there are other options out there that they may want to look at. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to Fine Print. This is our weekly poetry analysis show, typically at 9 p.m. New York time. On Sundays. So I do apologize. We have a late start today. Just doing some childcare things, dealing with some seasonal allergy things. So I appreciate you being with us despite slightly being off schedule. My name is Jeff. We're here to guide you once more with the verses in Fine Print, where we analyze poems. This is not workshopping. This is just looking at what there is in the piece and analyzing it. Today we have a piece that was written by Bic52 on Threads. So I want to thank them for allowing us to look at the piece. Let's take a look at this. This poem is entitled Gathering Wild Berries. The Brombeeren stain that now nut brown will neither wash nor wash away. The hessish humors molding with the huckleberry wine. Crimson, on passion to rust. Red, the keening flow upon the ground, whether of the vein or of the vine. The dye is set, the serum dry. Pricking finger, wrist, bloody juices lick the salt sweet wound, and feel the gritty blossom burr across your tongue. But hold the bleeding treasure fast, regain the sticky grip in pain, and squeeze the living paint onto the page, and press the scarlet ink to fit the meaning of its seed. Thanks again to Vic for allowing us to take a look at the piece. Specifically, I want to take a look at the intro, the very first line. Intros are great because the comparison we often give, and my apologies again for not remembering where it originates from, might be Triggering Town, but it could be another book, is this idea that, when you step into a poem, it's very similar to like stepping onto a boat. You have no idea if this boat's going to take your weight. You don't know if it's going to sink. You don't know when it's going to sink. You don't know if it's going to float. Like, you just don't know what you're about to get yourself into. And so what I like about this opening stanza is it immediately forces your reader to make a decision. Are they going to stick with you for this? Are they going to be willing to explore? Or is it going to be too much and they're going to need to find a different piece to read? It's everything, of course, starts with the title. So Gathering Wild Berries. So already that's doing a lot of placing, right? Putting us into a setting, maybe like a forest, some place with lots of nature. Okay, so already I think we're doing some things to make some determining factors for our reader so they can make a choice like, hey, am I looking for like a pastoral or a nature type poem, potentially even a romantic poem, or am I looking for something else? Okay. And then as we get into the poem, we're confronted with more choices immediately. So for instance, the very first two words, like the Brombeeren italicized, the Brombeeren stain. Okay, so now to immediately start your poem with a word choice that most likely most people are not going to be familiar with. I like, I think that's a bold move. I like that you're immediately confronting the reader with it. I think it's an interesting choice with the italics. We can talk about the the role I've italics in writing and things like that at another time. I'd love to know your own thoughts here. Do you like the italics being used? Do you not like it? Are you indifferent? Let me know your own thoughts for how you think those italics are being used for that first line. But we're already being confronted with a choice. If I don't know what brown beard means, which I did not when I first looked at it. So now, I mean, you can always make some context. So it says gathering wild berries, and then you're mentioning a stain. And I can tell you, for instance, when I was growing up, we did not grow up near a forest or anything like that, but we did have a mulberry tree in our backyard. And that was always one of my tasks because we had a basketball court, basically, that we made out of like a patch of dead grass that we just kind of plowed into dust, playing basketball all the time. But to get there, we had to walk past like this like concrete slab that like there was always crowded with mulberries, and like it would stain, get all over your clothes, if you didn't especially if you didn't sweep them up regularly. So, I'm already personally there between the wild berries and then the stain. But from not all readers, maybe. So you're forcing them to make a choice. Like, are you going to just keep reading? Are you going to take the time to Google it, find a definition? Or are you just going to be like, I'm not, this is too much work already, so I'm going to just read something else. All of them, I think, are valid options for a reader. So I appreciate the making that an immediate choice. I'm glad that this is an immediate choice that the reader has to make. Okay. The brown beard stain that now nut brown will neither wash nor wash away. So we're doing lots of things too. There's some other things here grammatically. So this is a pretty long line. Okay, we haven't even finished the sentence. The idea of it keeps moving. It's now gone 3 lines. Honestly, it's the whole stanza. The whole stanza is almost a single thought, right? So already think about we've made a vocabulary, like lexical demand of our reader, and now we're also making a kind of syntactical demand of our reader as well, right? We're asking them to, hey, handle this complex sentence. It's not short. It's something it's a single thought that's going to be carried across an entire stanza. Are you going to go with me or not? So I like that demand as well. We're also using like some relatively less common structures. So for instance, like neither nor, structures that have more of a formal edge to them, right? And then the word choices continue, right? Nut brown is interesting. Okay, fresh. I don't think that is necessary as, I don't want to say like isolating, but like as attention grabbing as, for instance, Braunbeeren is. But then we get some more words though that kind of lean back more into that Braunbeeren territory with Hessisch, even like the phrase Hessisch humors. That's a tricky phrase to say, the Hessisch humors. I would have a hard time reading this poem out loud for that first stanza. And then also Moling. I mean, Hessisch humors Moling. That's quite a line there, right? And then followed that by the Huckleberry wine. Huckleberry is really a fresh word choice there for wine, not something that you would expect to normally see. Okay. Garage Poets Open Mic is with us. Great to see you. They mentioned drawn into the title of this video. I appreciate you saying that. I would love to know your own thoughts on that. But going back into this is a stanza, between Braunbeeren, a touch with Nut Brown, just because it's slightly unusual. The grammar choices with, again, neither nor. The fact that we have a stanza that is a single thought across 5 lines. The fact that we get phrases, again, like Hessisch, humors, and Moling and then like huckleberry. It's like all of these choices combined suggests to me that we have some expectations of our reader if they're going to get through this entire poem. And this is an exercise actually I had people do. We hosted a poetry retreat April 5th through the 7th. In fact, right now on the channel, we're posting videos from we had a fellows reading from that. And so one of the things that we took some time to do is, and I think could be a really valuable exercise, is what do you know about your reader? Like your ideal reader. Not like the people that maybe even like necessarily actually read your poems, but like just the when you're sitting down or like for a specific poem that you have and it's finished, what do you think you know about the reader who's doing it? Or maybe if you have a collection, of poems that are related on a theme, what do you know about your reader? I can give you like an example. Like if I had to give like 3 sentences about my reader for my poems, I'm expecting someone who has some experience growing up in an urban setting, a multiracial background, familiarity living in a neighborhood that's not so great, but also having experiences with people who don't live in those sorts of neighborhoods, and just that sort of dichotomy. A person who's educated academically, but also has some street smarts to them. A person who's familiar with mythology to a degree. A person who's familiar with some elements of theology for symbolism purposes and things like that. When I'm thinking about my reader, these are all the things that I have in mind. Okay. This is not to say that other people can't read my poems and enjoy them. Other people can read poems and certainly enjoy them. Just by narrowing on a specific group, you're not actually limiting, because there's still people in the wider radius who are still going to go in on the work. I see, for instance, Joshua's here. What's up, man? Students, friends, creatives. That's how I would describe my audience. What kinds of students? Like, for instance, like a 5th grader is a student, right? But I don't know if you're writing for 5th graders. PhD, like doctorate students, but I don't know if you're writing for them either. Creatives in what specific industry? Like all of these categories. Like when you say friends, all your friends, like friends you had 20 years ago, friends you had 5 years ago, like which friends? I think all of these categories are things that we could probably hone in on a little bit more. Garage Poets Open Mic says that poems can be written by everyone, but they're an individual experience. For sure, 100% they could be written by everyone. Yeah, and by the more you can lean into your own individual experience, I think the more freeing, actually, and liberating it is in terms of the choices you make. So, like, for instance, with this poem, if I go in with the expectation that, I'm expecting that my ideal reader is going to be willing to, like, do some Google searches, has some, like, Queen's English background, is familiar with, like, punctuation, like standardized punctuation, and things like that, and is going to expect lines that are longer and structured, kind of like what we see here. You notice, for instance, aside from that 3rd line, everything's kind of in a block. If I'm expecting my reader to be looking for those specific things, the more I can kind of lean into that and give them more of that. Okay. So I really, Joshua was saying, dang, definitely could zero in 100% for each one of those categories. I think you could definitely give even more detail. But to again go to this piece, I like that this poem really kind of hones in on those aspects. And I think that's something that's going to do it a lot of service. So for instance, even the title, like Gathering Wild Berries, that word, it could have just been wild berries. It could have been the name of the actual berry, but no, there's this sense of even like with the gathering, I think, is a choice. And I think if we see the rest of the poem, we see similar sorts of choices appearing elsewhere as well. So for instance, crimson on crimson, it's like the colors on colors. So again, we're expecting our reader to follow around with that. Some other word choice things that I think match the first stanza, is like a keening. there's this comparison whether of the vein or of the vine. So again, you get these. This is parallelism, right? Parallel structure, where what you do in one part of a sentence, you do to the other, right? So whether of the vein or of the vine. The die is set, the serum dry. So again, we were operating. There's a lot of parallel structure going on. So when I say the die is set, comma, the serum dry, I'm using parallel structure, so I don't need to repeat the verb to be, right? I don't need to say the serum is dry. I can just say the serum dry, thanks to the repetition with parallel structure. Some other things that we see, like feel the gritty blossom burr. Again, I wouldn't say it's at the same vocab level as like things that we see in the first stanza, but I think it's still in a very similar vein. So I think there's a lot of consistency here. So to go back and just to kind of make sure that you're leaving today's stream with just something to be thinking about for your own pieces. Who is your audience? And then how are the choices you're making in your poem fitting with that audience? Okay, so for instance, if I'm doing a poem that's going to go really heavy on slang, then I'm going to try to, maybe avoid using some like academic phrases, or I'm going to twist and subvert those academic phrases to turn them into slang or things like that, because that's going to be something I'm really going to hone in on. Or for instance, if I'm writing for doctors, I might go hardcore and use as much of the doctor terminology and things like that. If I'm writing for kids, like look at Dr. Seuss, Dr. Seuss had the audience down. I'm writing for these kids, paying attention to rhyme. I'm making up words, putting characters in weird, strange situations, reliance on like heavy like fantasy and things like that. How much can we lean into our choices for our audience? All right, that's basically all I wanted to say for tonight. I'm tired. Man, today has been so bad for allergies. I hope you guys, if it's allergy season for you, I hope you guys are handling it okay. I've been doing good so far, but then today was definitely woke up hit by a hammer. I will see all you guys later. We'll be back on Tuesday, by the way, with more Diverses Live, where we just discuss poetry-related topics. On Wednesday, we have Lo-Fi Poet. That will be right around 8:30 p.m. New York time, where we just listen to beats and write some poems. And then on Sundays, again, we have Fine Print. Thanks for spending some time with me. Garage Poets, great to see you. Joshua, great to see you as well. Keep doing the thing, guys. I will see you all later. Hope you have a good day, have a good night, and have a good afternoon. Take care.